So I presented this at All Day DevOps 3 years ago, and it was online. It was a good time. I wore colored contacts, and if you haven't already recognized already, I love Halloween, so you can always talk to me about Halloween stuff. But this is definitely not a technical talk. If anything, it's my watered-down version of how I can relate it back to my world that I can understand. With that said, here are some key takeaways. I just want to start this off. You are not stuck in the business or in the industry you know best. What is DevOps? Just trying to keep it simple. And DevOps is relatable everywhere, in my opinion. And insider secrets of restaurant processes is, so if anything you walk away from here, you'll know how to handle taking a plate back or know the back of house processes of what happens when you send that plate back. Starting with this, there's just a little bit of history about me. I worked in restaurants for 10 years. I ended my career as a bookkeeper, a corporate bookkeeper for one of the largest profitable restaurants in the country, Old Ebbitt Grill being one of them. That's the President's Restaurant in DC, if you're familiar. If any DC natives knows Clyde's Restaurant Group. And with that said, it was a very interesting time in 2018 when I was asked to interview at this AWS consulting firm. And I will tell you, if you had talked to me then, I would say never would I ever be at tech, let alone standing in front of you all or ever speaking about technology. So that's just the one takeaway I want to make sure you walk away with that I think I've been talking to a few of you guys here already. Just there's a lot of reinventions of your life, and I hope to have like 3 or 4 more coming into that. So a little bit about me. Here's me, 21. That was me, 21 years old, having my first drink at Clyde's there. This is my very first talk, doing the same talk that I'm showing with you today, and I think it's still relatable, so you'll see I had white contacts in that one, and I had blue hair in that one. The obligatory pet photo. Every time I could wish upon the star, I wish for that she lives for another 20 years. She's 13 right now. And then transitions, Andrew, I listened to you, so. And then more pink hair, just a colorful hairdo. And this is just a quote that helped me decide to transition out of restaurants to coming into tech is you work best when you're most like yourself. I know it's a little touchy-feely, but this is just something I want to start with. So now that you know about me, and talk about DevOps. At the time, I had no idea what DevOps was, but there was a couple articles from AWS and my ex-firm that I worked with that talked about DevOps in terms of culture, that it is basically a group of people trying to work together to produce a product and having that seamless teamwork, culture, conversations, and all of that about. But most of you guys already know what DevOps is, so I won't go into too deep with it. The epiphany I had with that was I thought DevOps was strictly for tech. I thought it was something that I can only hear in a tech room or in a meetup space. But I was at DevOps Days DC in 2018. It was my very first one. And I've come to find out that it wasn't all technical. There was a lot of great talks about inclusivity, about communications, about having really great teams, and how do you bring that culture of collaboration together. So that was my epiphany at DevOps Days DC. I love that type of community. This is actually what I do now, is supporting those type of communities. So it's just really nice how full circle my career has come back with this. And with that said, DevOps is everywhere. At that DevOps Days DC, we had a breakout space or a birds of a feather room, and it came out to question what DevOps processes happen in your life. And we talked about grocery shopping, right? It's a grueling process. You got to write the list. You got to know, wait, Harris Teeter's better. Maybe Aldi's is better. Well, I know the aisles at Aldi's, so I know I can go in and out and easily get that, right? And especially that's just you yourself. Now imagine working with your spouse, your kids, your whole team of soccer kids coming out trying to get their candy, right? It's a grueling process to go to the grocery shop. That said, DevOps only matters if it produces results, whether it's a dinner, whether it's this wonderful event that we're at today, and recognizing each system is different. And I'm sure, as mentioned earlier, there's a lot of teams involved when it comes to restaurants, when it comes to your own organizations. And having that shared accountability between each team, that that shared shit factor. If something goes down, everybody's going down, right? Not just a siloed effect. And communication is key, just like in relationships, just like in your friendships, just like in events like this, having a Slack room, having a space that people can communicate on openly and having that open form of communication. So it's really everywhere in my opinion. Now, I just know a few of you guys have told me that you worked in the restaurant industry before. With a show of hands in the room, who actually has? Cool, cool, cool. Love you guys and anybody that's watching it. It brings to me, I think some of you would probably agree if you've ever been in the service industry. I think everybody should have at least 2 or 3 months of it, whether you made it or whether you're not, or whether you're doing it for a free parking space, whatever it is. I highly recommend you taking a moment or telling your kids to try working in the service industry. So, if you guys don't know, the way I saw DevOps is kind of 2 teams, right? You have your front of house, your back of house, your DevOps, Dev, and Ops. Back of house is more of your development team. You have your cooks are the developers, right? Your chefs are the scrum masters, and those are 2 different folks, right? Cooks and chefs there. And then you have your prep line or coders. They're the ones putting all those things together so that your cooks can put it together. And then you have your dishwashers or maintenance. And I want to highlight dishwashers here as forms of maintenance, as we had a lot of companies present on synthetic monitoring and having that type of maintenance opportunity there. It's an underrated role in the back of house, but I will tell you, if a dishwasher ever walked out of a restaurant, that restaurant will go down. You need plates to serve these things. You need somebody to continually provide the supplies for the cooks to use so they can cook that food for your customers and things. So it's really interesting. I did work at a restaurant once where the entire back of house team quit over a can of Red Bull. Long story, but I'll tell you, having front of house people trying to run back of house stuff, as it probably sounds familiar, DevOps, it's a really, really interesting ride. So just to point that out, but front of house host, I was a former host, I acted as a sales or firewall, I gotta make sure you're weird, not weird coming into the restaurant, but you're here with a reservation or whatever it may be. Your managers or your project managers, they're going around making sure the rest of your team is working very well, from your servers, your busters, including your hosts. Servers, again, operations, they're the ones kind of putting together that order so your developers can make it happen. And busters are patching. Again, one of those underrated roles. You really do need to make sure you have a buster and hostess and dishwashers to really make a restaurant come to life in a way. People just think it's the bartender, maybe the server, but there's a lot of hidden roles or unappreciated roles behind that I think would probably be similar in a DevOps technical environment. And of course, customers are the product owners, right? They're the ones that enjoy it all. Now, here's the piece, here's the product, right, that result. You follow the food, okay? Communication is key. Here's kind of the way, right? You order a plate, somebody's writing it down, maybe you have an allergy, maybe you don't like cauliflower, whatever it is. Now, I'm sure you've experienced it. They got your medium rare steak as a well done. Some of you might be saying, I'm not gonna send it back, I'm just gonna eat the steak. I don't want to deal, oh my goodness, they might be spitting in my food. And here's where I would say, no. Send it back. What happens with the DevOps process is it's so agile, it's so quick that they can get a new plate right back to you, a new product, a new line of code right back to you that can help get yourself out of downtime or whatever it may be in mostly minutes. Now, in terms of technical side, that's a big time frame to think about when it comes to that outage, right? And having a line of code come back out quick enough. But if you don't say anything, no one knows anything. So this helps with sending it back, because then it could be maybe that grill that the cook was cooking on was a little bit too hot than they expected. So they can go back and check and say, all right, what's going on here? Or maybe the plate was sitting too high because there's not enough back waiters running the food. So there are areas of improvements if customers let the developers and operations know, right? And that's different in technical worlds as far as maybe a complaint, maybe a ticket coming in. Send those tickets. Even if it's a little like, I can deal with it today. No, send it back. And don't be worried that it's a big deal for us. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're a little picky and you're like, well, these peas don't feel so good in my mouth, I want to do something about it, well, we might give a little grief. But as far as like actionable things, it's really good to send it back. Small batches, size is king. When it comes to restaurants, it's very similar. You're not cooking these huge, massive things, at least the restaurant I worked at. You're not cooking these huge batches of soups and freezing them because, it's not that good after a while. You have this small batch and having easier, quicker processes to fix versus taking down a whole plate, creating it from scratch where you already have some of these items prepped already and then putting it together quick enough so that it comes right back out to the customer. And so you're not that one guy waiting for their steak while the rest of your table is eating. And speed, security, quality, all comes into play when all the teams are working cohesively together, much like a very well thought out DevOps team already. Just like that said, loosely coupled systems, tightly coupled teams. There's a lot that can happen in any environment, right? You can't predict everything, but if you have good processes, have good team communication, it really does help the DevOps process. And I threw in this mindfulness moment. It was kind of a thing to think about. When I presented this at All Days DevOps, we actually sat down and closed our eyes, and I did a little ASMR vibe. I'm not going to do that today, but I do want to leave this slide up because it is important to be mindful of your environment, mindful of your teams, mindful of the product that you're producing, mindful of the sendbacks that come, and just be aware of what you're presenting as a company, as a business, as a person, even as a restaurant, even as a customer intaking the product. And lastly, that's me. My mustache photo. This is my thing I was rocking for a while. Again, I love Halloween, so I was always trying to stick out this way. But feel free to connect with me if you have any questions on restaurants. I hope you guys learned some cool things about that. But DevOps, to me, has been around in a lot of facets of my life, and I only knew it because of that epiphany I had earlier. So thank you so much.